All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight, we are here for a live discussion called Behind the Badge. We're going to be discussing the topic of mental health and law enforcement. Just some background, law enforcement is an area where mental health typically can be overlooked. In the last 5 years alone, over 900 police officers have committed suicide. In 2017, more officers died by suicide than actually in the line of duty. So we feel right now, as Police Week, it's an important topic of conversation. I want to introduce myself first. My name is Ryan Gattero. I will be your host and your moderator for the evening. I want to now open the floor up and have some introductions from the people of law enforcement. I'll start first with Miss Shayna Kendall.
Good evening. My name is Shayna Kendall. I am a sergeant and deputy commander of training for the New Haven Police Department. I've completed 11 years of service, and that's where my assignment continues until we make a transition.
Thank you so much, Shayna. All right, I'm going to choose the next person here, Frank.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Frank Sanotaro. I'm the corporate director of security for Retreat Behavioral Health. I'm retired from New York City Police Department. I retired in 2007.
Thank you so much, Frank. And last but not least, right now, Will.
Good evening. My name is Will Altera. I'm a Stanford police officer. I've been with the department since 2011. And I transferred from Westport Police Department, where I spent my first 2.5 years with that police department.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, all of you, for joining us tonight. We all know that this is an important topic of conversation and something that can easily be overlooked. So what we want to start with tonight is kind of where it all begins. All right. It's probably something that's talked about, but people don't really know much about it, which is the academy. All right. And the question we want to start with tonight is mental health. How is that something that's presented in the academy at present time? And also, how has it been presented perhaps in past years?
So I'll start. In the academy, the recruits that we have are taught and we engage in the idea of mental health from the beginning. The idea that if you can't take care of yourself, you can't perform the duties that the public needs you to perform for them. So with that, we have an introduction to our peer support team, as well as EAP, our Employee Assistance Program. With that comes our partners that we work with, as far as the therapists that come in, also with those programs to continuously continue to reach out and provide their services to our recruits, as well as our sworn officers, as well as open discussions from our chief of police.
Fantastic. And real quick, I want to open this up to Frank. I'm looking at you for this because I know you've been in law enforcement for a number of years. What were things back when you were first getting started? What was it like?
There really wasn't much mental health training at all that I remember, per se. But you always heard from the guys in the locker room, don't take it home with you, leave it in your locker, that kind of stuff. But as far as the department, mental health really wasn't pushed. Back then, it was just, go out, do your job, and that was it.
Right. And over the years for you, Frank, did you see any changes in that?
Well, like I said, I retired in 2007. So after 9/11, there was a big push for mental health. It was a big push to go to counseling. The job put different programs into place to get you counseling. It was the EAP at that time. New York City put a program together called the POPA program, which is very big today. So there's a lot more now than there was when I first started. A bigger push.
Good. And Will, any view on this from you, Will? I know we heard from Shane and from Frank, but what were your perceptions in regards to mental health and your experience in the academy?
There was an emphasis put on that. I entered the academy in 2009. So I guess after Frank's service, there's been more of a push to include mental health as part of the curriculum, to make it something that is focused on, because it's important. Because I think through surveys and just overall research and the reality of what the job is, it's something that's become a necessary part of the curriculum in the academy, something that should be focused on.
Okay, thank you. And just a real quick introduction. I apologize, Shivik. I know we missed you here in the beginning. Just a brief introduction of who you are and a little background so people at home know a little bit about you.
Yes, good evening. My name is Shafiq Abdusabar, and today was the last day of Ramadan, so it's actually our Eid, which is our holiday. So I'm trying to stay on the spiritual path, so I had to pray. So I would be on. So I had to be on time for that, to be on time for this. So I'm retired police sergeant, 21.6 years, a former colleague, my works for my alma mater, Sergeant Shana Kendall. So and I work on police reform. I mean, I guess you could say now my adult life, I have dedicated more of my adult life to police reform than probably anything else. I think the only other thing I've done longer than police reform has been married. So I'm a big proponent of police reform and just public safety overall. I think when we started working on this, there's a firefighter who passed away in the line of duty a few nights ago, and our prayers go out to him and his family. And there's another firefighter that is in a critical condition who was also on that incident. And the first thing I thought about today, I saw he's actually a relative of mine now, a former lieutenant for the New Haven Fire Department. And I reached out to him today and I said, "How are you doing?" Because he was in a similar incident where he almost lost his life. And I could see his whole face. And he said to me, he said, "I'm not doing too good." And I thought about it. I was like, man, like we put a lot of emphasis on police. Firefighters often get they escape the Black Lives Matter piece, but they're not going to escape the mental health piece. So just public safety overall, I think, these are jobs that you just have to do better at bringing these services. So I'm happy to be here. I appreciate all of you for inviting me for this panel and behavioral retreat. And Marissa Hayes, I appreciate you all. So let's get this thing started.
All right,
thank you.
This
party started.
Thank you so much. We're happy to have you. So I want to open up now to another topic that I think is one that most people would probably think of first when it comes to law enforcement, which is, do you guys feel like there's a stigma associated between mental health and law enforcement? It's obviously something I think that needs to be discussed, which is, what are the roles that you are all supposed to play as a police officer, and how does mental health tie into that? What's the overall perception, or if there's any stigma associated with mental health and law enforcement?
I think that there's definitely a stigma, just to your own teammates, your own colleagues. It was kind of perceived if you went for help, you're weak. So I think a lot of that kind of pushed away from officers going to get help. So now, being that it's so pushed up front that it's there for you, I think it makes it a lot easier for officers to get help.
Got it. And Frank, for you, do you feel like, again, I asked this question, did your mindset change over time? Did it stay the same throughout your duration in regards to mental health?
Well, when I was there, there was a big stigma. If you went for help, you were taken off the streets, your gun was taken, you were put in an office for a couple of years to be determined what was going to be done with you. Then you also, on top of that, then you have your colleagues. Hey, he went to the rubber gun squad. They took him off the streets. So you have that also, that piece. So for me, I'm kind of old school. So when things started changing, we were kind of afraid to come forward. When it was pushed on us after 9/11, a lot of us were like, no, we're all okay. And then it was mandated. They put mandated counseling in. So, and it did help. I was never a believer of counseling until I went through it myself, and it really helped, honestly.
Great.
Just to piggyback on what Frank was saying, I think that there is definitely a stigma attached to seeking out mental health services as a police officer, because as a police officer, you feel like you have to be strong for everybody. You have to be strong for yourself. You have to be strong for your colleagues. You have to be strong for your partner. But neglecting that piece of your overall health is going just to do a disservice to everybody, to yourself, the community you serve, and everybody involved in professionally and in your work life. But unfortunately, the stigma still exists. Even for myself, I'm very reluctant, or have been very reluctant in doing that, because I think that you feel like you're showing a little bit of weakness and vulnerability, and that's not typically what you're trained to do. You know what I mean? Showing that weakness, or admitting that there is a weakness in yourself.
Right. But, my issue was everyone comes to you for help, the public, your family. So when you need help, who do you go to? If everyone's already coming to you, who do you go to? And that was the hardest thing for me, to kind of let people in to try to help, because I thought it was just me all by myself carrying the world.
Right.
As we find, it's not true.
Real quick, Frank, you brought up you made a statement there before that I don't want to move past, which was you had said that they moved into mandated treatment, right? Mandated therapy for police officers. What would be your view on that? Do you feel like that's something that's beneficial, or something that could be potentially, counterproductive?
Well, that was just for 9/11, just
Gotcha.
for the situation that happened. I don't know what happened afterwards. If it came, I don't believe it's mandated now. I still believe it's your choice to go. If you need help, you seek help, unless you're in a situation where it's seen and they send you out for help.
Got it. All right, great. I still have Shayna. I'll go to you next. Same question. What's been your perception with stigma associated with law enforcement and mental health?
So I 100% agree with Will. We take an oath, and we're tasked with the responsibility of caring for everyone else. I will say that it is something that is beneficial. It's something that may not be openly talked about. However, although we have our peer support team and we have these services available to us within the department, a lot of people are seeking help or therapy outside. So it's not that it's not being taken advantage of, but of course there still does exist the the stigma of feeling weak. So I wouldn't say that officers are not getting the treatment that they need, some more than others. However, it's not something that's often talked about amongst your peers. Therefore, it still doesn't seem as acceptable as it should be.
Great. And Shafiq, I'm gonna go to you last year. Anything you want to add to what's already been shared?
Yeah, so because I'm not in no more, boom, I get to break some seals off of it. Law enforcement overall nationwide, very inadequate mental health services and supports for officers. We know that police officers have one of the highest divorce rates. The concept of first responder, what sometimes people don't understand, the reason police officers kind of always, we go back and forth with firefighters, because normally before the bad accident happens, the police show up first. Before the firefighters get there to save somebody's life as a paramedic, the police show up first. So the police are there to, they're catching the brunt of all of the, if we're going to call it the action or the gory stuff, or kind of like the bad stuff. So it is already understood that is what you're going to be up against. You add in, the divorce rates, very high alcohol abuse, high drug abuse, and in some case where people might, in terms of how other people self-medicate. So just imagine, as an officer, you can't use drugs or you can't abuse drugs, right? That the normal public might seek to for self-care or whatever whatever we want to call it. Now, as an officer, you've got to go to other vices in your life that are very abnormal in some cases. It could be extra relationships in your marriage. It could be hanging around with some bad people that you just hang around with because it's an outlet, and that's your outlet because they're not going to judge you. So overall, when you put it in the context of what do we want as a society for that officer, the officer's well-being, mental health is the last thing on the list that most departments, I would challenge any department, show me on your budgetary item, your yearly budgetary item, what do you devote to mental health services? What do you devote to wellness services of those officers? Having a wellness day where you bring in a therapist and a massage person and some oil, some essential oils, that's not going to cut it for these officers that are on the street every day. So, I am a big proponent, as I said before, now being a part more of these discussions. I think that part of the police reform should be having therapists assigned right inside of the police departments, right? That officers, it's kind of like that show Billions, one of my favorite shows, right? They've got the therapist right there every day to go there to motivate or, bring the officers up or down. I think that department should also have chaplains, right? I think the department should also have what I was trying to establish with the PD before I left, kind of like a spiritual room. So if you're a Christian, Muslim, Jewish, if you're Buddhist, it's just one room in the department. It doesn't have to be big. It can be 10 by 10, where you can go and you can make your prayers. You can go meditate. You can go to get a quiet space, right? In addition to, the department should have a chaplain, where when these incidents happen, they should be dispatched to go speak with the officer. So I'm going to give law enforcement right now nationwide a definite F on mental health. But I think if we start investing in that, I think we'll see a much better return on officers and their performance on the street.
Great. So Shafiq, you bring me to my next point here, next question, which is, right now, what are the resources that are available in law enforcement? And aside from that, is there any hesitation to actually use those resources?
Is that question for me?
That question can be for anyone, but if you want to answer, feel free.
I was going to shoot it to Shayna because she's in charge of training. So you might have more insight on that.
Yes. So as I mentioned, our department offers EAP, that's our Employee Assistance Program, and that also extends to the family of the police officer. So your spouse, your children, as well as our peer support team. We find that sometimes officers are hesitant to use them. Why? Because you don't want anyone to find out, right? Because again, there is that stigma of you perhaps not being able to do your job because you're dealing with something that you're struggling with, and that you are seeking therapy for. However, I think that now we are moving in a good direction in which, because of so much that is going on, having conversations of just the simplest things, that police officers are not to see the things that we see every day, and understanding that that's not a real normal day-to-day citizen encounter to see people in the worst of times. And so I think that we're moving in a direction where it's understood. If you have to go and talk to someone, you seek that person and you talk to them. Also, coworkers talk to each other. And if someone is seeing a therapist, perhaps they would lend, okay, well, maybe you should check out this person or that person because they've helped me. I think that we've become more open to the idea that, perhaps when I went through this, the department offered these services. I didn't take them up on it, but I realized that it was affecting my sleep. It was affecting my interactions with my friends and my family. And then I went to go and talk to this person, and it actually helped. So I think sharing successes from your own perspective also helps with that.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Shayna. Anyone else?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to piggyback off of Shayna, but many departments offer, obviously EAP is the Employee Assistance Program, which is confidential. You can call and be set up with a therapist and go through that process. But there's also peer groups. With my police department in Stanford, we have the COPS is the acronym for COPS offer peer support, and there's several members, and it's among rank. Like you could be a sergeant. There's not a prerequisite to be part of the team. It's a panel, not a panel, but a team of officers or sergeants or lieutenants that you could reach out to, and their main objective is to provide you with that kind of conversation that you may be seeking in light of something that you're going through, whether it's professional or personal. And you can always reach out to those, and one of those members could then put you, based on what they think your needs might be, to get you to EAP or something more.
Great. Does anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that, I think that the frontline supervisor in departments is the most critical proponent for advocating for mental health for officers. And I think also departments, they have to adopt this thing. Like this has to be the mantra. Like we hear community-based policing in the mental health of officers, like the health and wellness of officers, it needs to literally become a side-by-side conversation, because it's not going to work without it. It's that frontline sergeant that is going to be the one. Why are you late for work? Is the officer late for work because they're just a knucklehead? Is the officer late for work because they're just lazy, or what we call them, a slug? Or is the frontline supervisor going to take time to find out, why are you late for work? I'm late for work because I slept on the couch because me and my wife are going through a divorce because she caught me in a situation and I don't know what's going on and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. It's the frontline supervisor that needs to sit with that officer and talk them through that situation, right? It's the frontline supervisor that's going to know who came to work high. Why are you high? And what are you high on, right? We need to work through their situation. So departments, but that doesn't work if departments are not set to embrace that. If the stigma, which is most of the departments around the country, is, think about how we train officers. You get in a shooting and we tell the bosses or the sergeants, don't take the officer's gun when they get in a shooting until you replace it with a gun, because it's a psychological thing. So this concept of never having an officer be disarmed, never taking an officer's gun, this is so ingrained in the culture of policing. Think about, that's why when the whole put your badge and gun on the desk, you just got murdered. The department just murdered you, basically, when they put your badge and gun on the desk. It's like, so in this concept of you get in a shooting and you replace a gun, and then now you want somebody to come and be vulnerable and say, I'm not feeling too good, feeling a little unstable. I don't know if I want to harm myself, but I'm really, your gun's getting taken. They're taking your gun. They're taking all your guns. And like Frank said, and you're going on the desk, bro. So we're not there yet. I would say that I think that's the challenge, is how do we create that bridge? Because that's not connecting for many officers. And I think that's a barrier.
And to piggyback on what you're saying, I think that it doesn't just start with the supervisors. I think as just veteran officers or somebody you trust within the police department who's not a supervisor, who you like, if you're going through a divorce or whatever hardship you're going through in your personal life, there's guys or women that you can talk to, that you can confide in, and they can just be like, hey, listen, I think you need such and such. I think you need to talk to somebody. That's you have to be able to just not just put it on the supervisors, but just have somebody that you could rely on, period, as a coworker. You know what I'm saying? So and also we were talking about that in our meeting. Yeah, it's been emphasized that in the in a incident involving a police involved shooting, like they're not just going to take your gun anymore, because that's a psychological thing that'll leave you like feeling like, man, did I do something wrong? Or it's not going to leave you in a good state of mind when that happens. So when something like that happens, they do come in and replace your gun because it's part of the investigation. I think it's a big part of it, because there's a big mental aspect to everything that we do, and we just got to be more cognizant of that.
But I think
And I just want to add.
Oh,
Go ahead, Shane.
Oh no, Frank.
Frank can go first, and then you.
I think every department's different, from the bigger departments to the smaller departments all around the country. A lot of the stuff is different. Bigger departments have more resources to get to places. I'm not sure how Connecticut is, as far as manpower per tour. But when I worked day tour in New York City, we turned out 80 to 90 officers per shift. So really, like you were saying, for the supervisors to kind of keep an eye, it's kind of hard. I think that's a lot of responsibility on that. But as Will said, there's other officers. I'm sure now it's a little easier, less. I'm not going to say the stigma's gone, but I think there's a little less now than there used to be. If you came forward, you would get mocked, by the senior officers. The older guys have been there 20, 30 years. Suck it up, young fella.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big thing also.
Great, thank you, Frank. Shayna.
Yeah, and just to add, as candid as this discussion is, I think that in our agencies, we need to make discussions like this just as candid, right? Because just like what Frank said, like the frontline supervisor who's overseeing 30, 40 officers or whatnot may not necessarily, catch on to those cues that Shafiq was just mentioning. However, those beat officers that work with each other know so much about each other that perhaps the frontline supervisor does not know. But then there's a battle between the officer either protecting the other officer who needs help by not saying anything because they don't want to betray them. They don't want to feel like, they can't be trusted. And then there is, okay, well, I know the process if I say, okay, if I bring this to the attention of a supervisor, okay, this person needs help. This person, every time they come to work, they've been drinking, or every time they come to work, they go find a hole somewhere and they just cry. They know that, but they also are aware of, okay, well, I know that if I bring this to the attention of my supervisor and the rank and file, what are they going to do to my friend, to my brother, sister in blue? What happens then? And then there's that questioning of, did I do something wrong? So I think that just having these normal, candid conversations on, what that looks like is a step in the right direction.
Great. And I think this panel itself is a step in that right direction, Shayna, because I think this doesn't happen enough, these kinds of conversations. I want to switch directions a little bit here. We've been talking about what the perception of internally in the departments and how mental health is addressed. Another area to talk about is family, right? And I'm curious to see how family is impacted by your mental health, or how mental health plays some role in your family dynamic. I'm sure that's something that you guys probably have talked about, or maybe you haven't. And so I'm just curious on what your perceptions are about the family dynamic and your overall mental health while on the job.
Well, I can say I didn't talk to my wife about the job. I didn't want to talk about it. I lived it once. I don't want to live it again. So I wouldn't come home and talk about what happened at all. I would hold everything in. And looking back after going to counseling, that was the wrong thing to do. I really should have been looking for help and the support of my wife or my mom or my dad. So I think not talking about things really hurts you. And once you keep everything in, you implode. There's just at some point where you're just going to give. You can't put any more inside.
Right.
For me personally, I think family and home life is a big part. It's either going to help or you're going to create a problem for your home life, because I found for me that whenever I kept stuff in, I I didn't necessarily understand or know exactly what was bothering me at the time, but like little things would set me off. You know what I mean? So I take it out on my spouse, and I'm not really sure. I'm thinking about it and like, what am I really mad at? What am I really upset about? And it has nothing to do with what I'm currently upset about, but all the things that I'm harboring. You know, on the flip side of that, like if I have a tough night and I come home and I literally can't hold it in, and I just come home and you know, tell her everything about what's going on, it helps me a great deal to let that stuff out and just work through that, because not necessarily looking for her to have the solutions to the issues, but just being able to have somebody you can confide in, to just talk about it and just have them be there for you, rub your shoulder or whatever. It's just a great help just to release that. You know what I mean? And I think it's a great help, and it becomes your home becomes an ally for what you're going to be professionally. You know.
Great. Shayna, Shafiq?
Yeah, so I think that for me personally, you know, home has always been a place of just safety, right? It's the place where I find, you know, with my spouse, the most happiest of times. On the other end, I don't feel like, you know, we still have that protective role where dumping on, you know, that you perhaps just had to pick up body parts from someone who jumped in front of a train. You kind of want to protect your family from those things, from those images. Although it feels good to pour that to someone, you also don't want your family thinking and worrying every day that you're going out that this is what you're doing. So most of the time you have friends who you can dump this on and really talk to about the things that you see, because it's not normal for everyday people, for our spouses, for our family and friends to see this. So for me, I just find that if I'm going through something or something really disturbed me, I would simply be vague, not withholding any details, and then find the comfort in my spouse providing me with, you know, with a brighter side of things. And I mean, it helps having my spouse be a therapist. So, but you know, you don't want to dump that on them.
Great. Thank you, Shayna, for that. Shafiq?
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of like with Shayna. I think that this is a conversation relative to your relationship and the strength of your relationship. You know, me and my wife been married in June, it'd be 29 years. And so we had already been married for like about, I believe it was like 4 years before I got on the police department. And all I had was one goal. I wanted to make sure that when I finished the job, I was still married. And I wanted to make sure, as I always say, I wasn't chasing my children around as a police officer trying to lock them up because they were doing crazy stuff because I neglected my family. I will tell you, as a retired officer, I share now as some things just might come up in a conversation, and I might, like if you were having coffee talk, and I'll share, I guess you would say, the radio version, the radio version of that incident. And my wife looks at me in horror, like, oh my God. And so I can only imagine if I would have told her that story when I was an officer, when I was a sergeant. I don't believe that it's normal for what we go through and have gone through as law enforcement. It's not normal for us. So we don't have the capacity to make it normal for somebody else. It's shocking to us. In my opinion, it's going to always be shocking to me, and as much as I may want to forget something, it only takes a moment for somebody to say, oh, remember that? And it'd be somebody, a civilian. They'll say, oh, you remember that incident that happened there? And I'm like, yeah, I was there. And now I'm going to be there for like the next 4 months, like every single day, because I'm going to go through that. I don't want my wife dealing with that. I don't want my children dealing with that. So my thing was, I'm going to do everything I can do to shield my family from stuff until it hits the newspaper or online. And I'm trying to preempt it by saying, hey, listen, the night I got in a shooting, I got in a shooting at 12 o'clock midnight on a New Year's. I didn't leave the station until 9:20 that morning. They kept me there. They made me write the report. I didn't get the special treatment. I had to write the report and the whole thing. I came home at 12 with all of my uniform on. My sons were, I think, one of my sons was 1. My daughter was 3. My other son was 5. My other son was 7. I came home. I slept in my entire uniform on the couch with my gun belt. Fell asleep on the couch. I woke up at 5:45. I looked at the clock. I went back to sleep for 5 more minutes, and I woke up and I said to my wife, when the news comes on at 6 o'clock, I'm going to probably be on the news because I got in a shooting last night. And she looked at me and was like, get out of here. You're joking. And at 6:01, my picture was all over the news saying that I got in a shooting. My wife watched the news. I watched it with her. And she turned to me and she said, I'm with you on this one this time. And I looked at her and I said, so you wasn't with me on the other incidents? And that was the moment we bonded together. I eventually got fired. I got charged. I got fired. I was out of work for 15 months. I had to get on welfare. I had to collect food stamps. I was standing in the same food stamp line with people that I had arrested and had dealt with on the street that supported me. But, the struggle is real. The struggle is real. You don't know where the road's going to lead you. But because she was there for me and we bonded like that, and she didn't know all the details, eventually she did, it worked out. But I think that we can burn our spouses out. They're not designed for this kind of stuff, man, because we're not. And like Shayna said, I need an ally at the end of the day, man. I need somebody that if I have to break down and cry, I need somebody to hug me. I don't need nobody crying with me. And then they need a hug. I need a hug. We can't both need a hug right now.
Right. It brings up another point here, staying on the same topic. It sounds like the children can be very heavily impacted by what it is that you do day in and day out. Does anyone have any experience with that? And what can you share about it? How it affects maybe even their mental health, knowing what you do every day? I guess that was more for Shafiq.
So, I have a 25-year-old son that just became a police officer that Shayna just trained. Thank you very much. And he grew up basically as a kid cop. I brought him to the police department when he was 4. He used to run around the locker room. We went camping. He's my hunting buddy. He's my fishing buddy. We do all kind of stuff together. At 15, he told me he was my best friend. So I was like, dude, we're going to keep it that way, right? My daughter, she'll take a Black Lives Matter movement to the moon on me. My other son, same thing. My other son's, very pro Black, so sometimes you don't know the impact of where your kids are going to go. What I always try to do was just be a present and accountable father. I'm here. I'm your father. Let's go do stuff. So I try to do everything with my kids: camping, fishing, hunting, bouncy ball, skateboard park, whatever it was. My goal was just to be with my children. And if they had questions, I would answer them, but I would never like match it up, be like, I need you to do this because I don't want you to be like, the dude I chased on the street. I never did that kind of stuff.
Got it.
Or don't be like those people over here. That's why I never did that. This is what I told my children. You might be better off than some other people, but you're not better than them. You're just better off today. That's the only thing that's between you and the other people that are inflicted with crime or poor or disenfranchised. The only difference between them and you is that you're better off today. Because I believe if you change a person's economic situation, you also increase the impact that they will have around crime or being exposed to crime. And that's how I've always kept my children. And I try to lead by example, by giving back in the community, working with kids in the inner city, working with folks that are disenfranchised. When I did it, I brought my kids with me. So I think that's the way that's how I got my return on it, and it's worked out for me. Thank God. I mean, my kids are doing great. They're involved in the community. They're very, very philanthropic, and I think that worked for me.
Great. The overall census that I'm getting here is that transparency is beneficial at home. It's beneficial at work. There's obviously a balance there, and I'm sure that sometimes can be overwhelming. That brings me to my next question, which is let's talk about transparency. What are you all doing for your own self-care? What are you doing to maintain that mental stability? Shannon, just to know you're on mute still.
I noticed that. Sorry about that. So I'll start. I am a figure competitor. So it's a form of bodybuilding. So I work out. So I work out every day. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I just started to transition into meditation, which we went to a Heart 9/11 class and just understood the benefits of meditating. So that's what I do for self-care, and it's been great for me. It's something that has been beneficial for me personally, as well as being on the job, being a police officer. So I mean that has worked for me.
Great. And Shannon, does your significant other do anything to help you with self-care, or?
Yes. Well, he goes to the gym as well, but he also tends to, because he is a clinical director and a therapist, he kind of is my spouse and therapist. So yeah, the simple things of asking how's your day. And when you ask someone how's their day, really want to know how's your day going. Most of the time we're just asking someone how's their day because it's the nice thing to do, and we're expecting them to say, oh, it was good or it was fine. But really having the time to actually want to know about your day and understand what happened during your day and how they could be of further support for you.
Great. I'm happy to hear he does that for you. Let's keep going around. Self-care. What else does everyone else do here for their own sanity? What else do you do to take care of yourself?
I'm with Shayna. I work out and physical therapy. I call it physical training. It is mental therapy for me personally. So whatever I'm going through, going to the gym kind of helps me. It's a form of release. You know what I mean? So it's a form of just beating it out of you. So it's beneficial physically, and you're working things through because during your training, you're going through things cognitively and, getting in a mood and just, I think, exercising the demons out. So that, and I do agree with your spouse being there as a way to help you with that as well. Because also to contradict that, actually, I think your spouse knowing when not to ask is important too. Sometimes I don't want to talk about it. Sometimes I don't want a hello. I need to come in and just not talk at all. Mm-hmm. I need a minute to decompress. I don't need to tell you everything, and I don't want to talk sometimes. So like I'm different. I believe I'm a hard person to be with because of that. But I think it's important for your spouse to understand that boundary as well. Like, I don't want to talk right now. It has nothing to do with you, but I just need a few minutes to work things out for myself, or take a shower, or just relax before I engage in anything. You know what I mean? So
great. That's great stuff. Frank or Shafiq?
So for me, just not being on the job has been a big stress relief. You can relate to that. It's huge. You don't realize how big it is until you really leave the job. But when I was on the job, the big thing for me was vacation. I had to take my vacation time, 2 weeks, go away, decompress, come back. But to Will's point, coming home, I had an hour and a half train ride. So I had a lot of time to decompress before I got home to deal with the family. So that helped. Now I'm in the gym. I go 5 days a week. I'm in the gym 5 a.m. My daughter joins me. So we have a really good routine, and that helps a lot. I really don't have much stress now with my job. It's pretty much stress free. I love it compared to what I did go through. So you guys that are still working, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Retirement is awesome.
Great. All right. Shafiq, what about you?
Yes. So I think the greatest self-care that an officer can do is, number one, try to link up with somebody that's in retirement. And, try to link up with somebody that has successfully retired, right? To help them guide you through, how did you successfully retire, right? I like to believe I successfully retired. I'm not a police officer. I do not have to carry a gun to get paid. I work for myself. I have a degree still that I ain't put to work yet, right? So because of that, I'm completely out, right? I don't have to worry about the whole so-called rat race. And I can look back and guide officers and say, listen, this is what you need to be thinking about doing. 2 years before I retired, I decided that the therapist that I had for about nearly, I would say 90% of my career that I had been going to, I decided to go with my wife, not for marriage therapy, but I wanted to just go and start meeting with the therapist. Hey, listen, I'm about to retire and we need to go sit and talk. And after I retired, we went and did about a couple of sessions together. And then I continued on with those sessions. I have not gone in probably the last 7 or 8 months, but he's there if I need him. So I think what Shayna mentioned, EAP is there. The departments don't always promote it and make it as effective as it could or should be for the officers. But, this is about your own soul. So I would encourage every officer, go to EAP. If you got a therapist and they're not being beneficial, get on the hotline like I did and say, I went to the EAP therapist and I told her things wasn't going well for me. My life was getting even more challenging. And she told me I was a black man in America, suck it up and get pitted, and kind of like get past it. And I called EAP and said, get me somebody else. Okay. And they got me somebody else. They said, oh, we'll get you somebody that's more related to trauma. And I've had that therapist now for well into, I think, about maybe 18 years. Okay. Got to have a therapist. Why? Because that's where you got to dump all that stuff. Can't dump it on your wife, can't dump it on your girlfriend, can't dump it on your boyfriend, can't dump it on your husband. Give that stuff to the therapist. Dump all that stuff to the therapist. And then you come out and then you go do stuff with your family. In terms of the other part of self-care, I think it's about getting a laundry list and adding a list of things that you do and know how they make you feel. When I was on a job, I loved the movies by myself on a Tuesday. That was my outlet. I'm in the movies, felt like Michael Jackson in my own movie studio, watching the movie. For somebody else, it might be a video game or whatever. Now in post-retirement, like Frank, listen, I went out and bought me one of them $1,000 zero gravity massage chairs, right? Nice. Got it right in front of the TV, right? So I get my nails done. I get my feet done. So you've got to have a list, like Shayna, and you got to incorporate exercise. If exercise, the physical exercise and healthy dieting and healthy eating is not built into your lifestyle as a police officer, you're decreasing your lifespan and you're going to make your life more miserable in retirement. And then in retirement, if you're not focusing on that stuff, you're going to decrease your lifespan, and you're going to make your retirement miserable. So, and that's stuff that I got from the therapist. He was like, look, dude, got to go to sleep at night on time and you got to do something, some physical exercise. So those are my, takeaways for brothers like Will, that's on the job now. Set up a plan, so a plan for success, so you can successfully live in retirement.
Shafiq, I appreciate you saying that. That's one of my things to do is going to the movies by myself, setting up a time either once or a couple times a month where I have a nice cheat meal and I go to the movie theaters by myself and just enjoy that. Also, I love traveling. It's a big, for me, going through the rat race, as you call it, and the grind. Sometimes you're getting ordered back, you're working a lot of overtime, and that week or 2 weeks where you're on some tropical place, some tropical island, or just exploring a different country and experiencing a different culture it makes you look around and appreciate that you have this job that allows you to be able to do that. So it makes it, it brings light into it. Like, you know what, I go through this rough thing, but it makes it all worth it for me because I'm able to go on multiple vacations if I want to, every year. So it's a great thing to do, but like, we can't just fall into the grind and keep grinding and keep grinding and keep grinding and never allow ourselves to come out of it. Whether we have to put things in place to be able to decompress, and not just decompress because you're dealing with things, but actually enjoy your life. You know what I mean? You only have one. You know what I mean? Take the time. You're only going to be this young today, right now. You're going to be older tomorrow. So take the opportunity to make the best of your situation and enjoy your life as best as you can. And that'll make you a better police officer, better husband, better son, better wife, all of that. I believe in that.
I appreciate everyone's transparency on here, and I see the comments coming in. Everyone at home is appreciating all of this as well. I want to kind of switch directions here once again, and this is a question directly for Shayna, which is, as a female in law enforcement, I'm very aware that the ratio of men to women in law enforcement, it's very drastic difference. And so do you feel that, as a woman, you face different mental health challenges on the job?
So on the job, I don't think that the challenges are different. I think that it encapsulates more or encompasses more. And that is, being a caretaker in your home environment, coming to work, facing the challenges that you have internally, interdepartmentally, because those challenges can be triggers as well as what you have to do to perform your duties to the community. So I think that for me personally, I'm less reluctant to talk about it, recognizing the impact that it could have on me personally. And I think it's okay, at least for me, to be okay with saying, I can't do today. Today is just not for me, and I need to remove myself and I need to decompress and be able to sit quietly and not address anything, not talk about it, not even think about it, just literally try to silence myself. But the variances in the concerns, I think that for me personally have been similar, if not the same, for my male counterparts. I think that they're heightened based on, at least for myself, tend to overthink things. And therefore, if I don't have, a result, or if I don't have the ability to change or affect the situation how I should, then that can also be a trigger for mental health and the need to decompress and seek help and conversation and communication with people. So to answer your question, I don't think that there's any difference in the mental health challenges. I do think that, I know that your question referred to being a female, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that I am a Black female in law enforcement. And although that on the surface, it may not seem as though there's a difference or there is a need to emphasize that, there are some challenges that come with that. And so that weighs on, my mental health as well, if it's not checked. So I would say that, that would be the only difference.
Right. Great. And another question, back in a different direction again. How do you feel the departments you either work for or have worked for promote mental health awareness? Is there anything they do to encourage, promote, support presently?
Yeah, for my department, we have, I think most departments do, but we have a gym in our police station where you can go work out and just, stay healthy and also decompress doing that. Also, there's trainings that we actually in Stanford go above and beyond the state mandate. And we're actually right now going through a phase offered by Cobalt Professional Services. They're going to come through, and all of our officers are going to be going through a training program conducted by them that's going to help out with stresses and resiliency strategies and tactics and information for officers to deal with professional and personal stressors. So I think, yeah, it's been, our chief puts out a chief's update every, I think at least twice a week, at least weekly. He comes out and there's a and that hasn't been done in the past. So there's been a lot of positivity in that direction as far as addressing and promoting mental health awareness within the police department and making it okay to acknowledge that, what, we all know that this is a crazy job that we do, and sometimes you're exposed to traumas that aren't normal to an average person to constantly have to experience. So take the time you need, take a day off, like all that stuff is definitely promoted. And supervisors, sergeants, lieutenants have come out to guys, man, if you need a day off, take it, and nobody's going to look down on you and judge you if you take a sick day. If you need to, you need a mental break. Like, you can't just keep going through it, So yeah, it's definitely something that is promoted within our department.
Great, fantastic. Anyone else in their own experience with self-care and how it's promoted within your department?
I'll just add to that what Will said. So we also have state-of-the-art fitness facility, and it's actually not on site. So when you get off of work, you're not still in the building in police headquarters. It's actually at an entirely different, desolate location. And it can just be you and the equipment. Our department makes it so that the officers have access to it whenever they need. So you can get off of work and you can go there. If you happen to wake up and it's having a bad night at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can go there. So our department, yes, we also have did our EAP as well as peer support team members to recruit new peer support team members who will be going through training to add to the team to make it more well-rounded, more available to people who could, again, as Will said, who could kind of expedite or be your voice to get any services that you need. And our department, again, continues to promote, listen, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else. And it's okay, as Will said with his department, if you need a mental health day, it's okay to take a mental health day and say, you know what, you don't have to provide an explanation as to why you're taking it. Just, today is not going to be the day that you feel the best to perform the duties that you're tasked to perform.
Great. Thank you, Shana. Thank you, Will. I want to kind of redirect this back to Frank and to Shafiq for the next question here, which is, what happens if they don't prioritize mental health? You guys have any personal experience with that or anything you want to share?
I don't.
Okay.
So what I will add is that, the way the structure is set up currently right now, most departments they haven't adopted a theory, that promotes the encouragement of mental health. So most departments have in their contracts that if you don't take any sick days off, you can accumulate those sick days and then you can retire earlier, or you can buy back, you buy back your sick time. So those contracts are actually designed to tell you, don't stay home. Don't take a mental health day. Actually go to work. Never take a day off for 10 years. You'll accumulate this particular time and you can retire early. So that's, so it's kind of like the system is backwards. some of the departments will have a caveat put in there. Hey, we're looking for so-and-so wanted for this fugitive warrant. Whoever picks them up today or gets them on their shift today, you get a free day off. Well, your free day off is predicated on you engaging in one of the most life-threatening activities that you could possibly have in your career, the most dangerous felon or fugitive. So again, that's not encouraging. What I also found too with a lot of officers is financial management. Most police officers burn through money on their career, and don't manage their finances well, right? Live above and beyond their means. And so as a result of that, when you have 4 weeks of vacation, you'll find officers taking 2 weeks and working overtime because they need to make money to pay bills, to pay down the debt. And if you're divorced and you're paying alimony, forget about it. So there needs to be there needs to be a recognition of, hey, we need to help officers financially manage their money so they can use their vacation to actually have a vacation. And we need to restructure contracts so that officers do get actual mental health days that they have to actually take, right? So that they're not scrambling to accumulate all this time to be like, yeah, I never took a day off. I worked for 15 years straight. Yeah, but you are alcoholic, you're a nut job, and you're about to lose your family, and you're like 200 pounds overweight. You know what I'm saying? So in my thing, like, it's got to be part of the police reform.
Sure. We've
got to restructure. And I'll leave on this note. Every year, officers and departments have to get recertified to carry their firearm. If they fail, they got to go back, right, and go back to be recertified again. I think that there should be some type of mental health certification. And I'm not confusing this with, taking a fitness test. And I'm not confused. No, I'm saying that if there was a course that could be taught on, this is what you do for wellness. These are the signs of depression. This is how you maintain a relationship with your family. This is how you deal with your wife and your children. This is how you do healthy eating. This is how you do exercise. And if you go through that class and that course and you take all the, you take the test well, and then you give out a wellness plan about how you're going to do your self-care, you get a certification, and that should come along with you taking your firearm exam. When we get to that level, then the law enforcement will have taken this seriously.
Great. I want to ask one more question here because it's very relevant to what's going on today. Social media has become such a huge part of, I think, everyone's life. And nowadays you can see anything on social media. And I know law enforcement has been a focus on social media. And so my question is how has social media impacted you in regards to, again, your overall mental health? Or does it ever bring up questions or concerns for your own emotional stability when you see what you see on social media?
Absolutely. Last year was a very tough year for me personally because it's not, social media is a place for everybody has an opinion. Everybody's entitled to opinion, whether they're wrong or correct, right? So constantly seeing the negativity about police. I identify as a police officer. I identify as a Black male. You know what I mean? But constantly seeing the stuff, and it's not just from the news networks or what have you, but it's seeing things posted online from people that you grew up with, from family, from friends that that you thought supported you. And it's not just about you, it's just the preconceived notion of what a police officer is. You know what I mean? Seeing the many negative posts, it really took a toll on me. So I personally had to just delete those apps off of my phone, and I stopped using social media for some time because I couldn't deal with it anymore. It's just just being exposed to that negativity and your workforce being villainized the way that it was just put me in a bad space. So I think social media in that regard could be used as a positive tool, but in many regards could be used as a negative one, and it does have an impact on people. And for me personally, it had a great impact on me. I started using it again, and I think I use it less, and just being unplugged for as long as I was helped me a great deal. You know what I mean? So not just looking and seeking out all the negative comments and things like that. You know, it's a great unplugging. I think is a great way to address your mental health as well. You know what I mean? Because when you're doing that, you find yourself digging yourself into a deep rabbit hole. You know what I mean? And it's not good for you. You know, so it's a place too that could be used to educate people who just are ignorant to what it is that we actually do. So I think if we have more people like us stepping up to, you know, have discussions like this one here, it's a great way to use social media, because we're doing this live on Facebook, and instead of, you know, shutting down and not having the discussion, you know, I was very reluctant at first to do this, but I felt that it was, you know, my duty to sit here and represent the police department, and also represent being a Black male, because I'm in the middle of both of these things right now. So I think it has a great impact for the good and the bad.
Great. Thank you, Will.
So I feel like Will said everything that I was going to say. So I'll add to that by saying the same. I was on social media and really had to remove myself, because I am a police officer and it's a noble profession and I truly love what I do. And so to continue to see messages about all police officers, especially knowing the work that I put in to dedicate myself to the community that I've lived in, that I've grown up in, it's almost as though people forget that you're human, right? And to Will's point, adding, you know, it's not necessarily strangers, it's your friends, it's, you know, family members that are perhaps not really seeing you as that police officer and spewing the same venom that everyone else is talking about policing. And so saying that you find yourself, you're scrolling and scrolling, and by the time you know it, you've been scrolling for an hour and you're just sinking into this hole of almost misery, because you start to find yourself questioning, you know, whether or not your profession is not the right profession for you, but what you initially got in this for. And for me, it was for my community. Just to, you know, it was to share a personal occurrence that occurred to me that brought me into policing, is that my brother was murdered in the city that I currently work in. And so for me, it's just everyone always seeing just the uniform and not understanding or trying to try to relate that there is a person who's under that. So this is called behind the badge. There is a person behind that badge who has thoughts and emotions and feelings and go through trauma and have, you know, went through the same types of trauma that people in the community are going through that you're responding to. So yes, once you get inundated with the negativity, you have to unplug, you have to decompress. And similarly to Will, now that I have re-engaged in social media, I really don't even get on it anymore. It's just another method of communication to my friends and family who are near and far.
Great. Thank you, Shayna. Anything from Shafiq or Frank?
Yeah, I have to commend the officers that do the job these days. I'm not sure I could have done it. It just, everyone's against you. When I was on the job, there's a mutual respect for each other, whether you were walking the streets or an officer. Or, you know, it's different now. It just doesn't seem like there's that respect anymore. So for me, that would be hard, because I'm a people person. I say hello to everyone walking by. If they say hello, great. If they don't, you know, that's good too. But I always made it a point to talk to everyone on the street, no matter what they were up to. You know, if they were homeless, drug dealers, prostitutes, I always engaged. And not being able to get that back now, that would bother me. You know, it was always for us, it was community policing. We were one with the community in New York City back in the 90s. So seeing such disrespect, I don't know if I can do it. It's, you know, Will and Shana, I mean, you guys are doing a great job. I commend you on that.
Thank you, Frank. And Shafiq, last word before we finish up with just a couple more things.
Yeah, so I came in policing in '96. I was an actual advocate against police brutality. So, you know, I came in, if you would have called it Black Lives Matter, then I would have been that dude. And then I became a police officer, and I continued my activism for people in the community to try to do everything I can do to make policing better for the marginalized communities. And that's just been my mantra. So I've always taken criticism from both sides. I always felt like that comes along with the territory, that comes along with the change. In terms of social media, I'm running for public office now, so I have to be on social media, but I never let social media define me or my views. Like Frank, I'm a person, you know, I'm down with the people. So, you know, social media is not going to always represent everybody in society. It does give you a snippet, but I think for Will and Shana, you just got to be strong. You know, hey, listen, you do this work because it's something that you love and you think it's important. You keep your faith in your Lord or your Creator, and know that's the higher power that you're actually serve. It's not the bad you serve. You're serving humanity, right? And the person, or I should say, the ruler of humanity is the Almighty. However you may worship Him. So that's how I always kind of looked at it. People are going to have their opinions, but at the end of the day, when you're out there doing your job, everything that you do, when you go home, can you live with yourself? Can you sleep at night? Can you look your family in the face? And if you don't wake the next morning and you have to stand before your Lord and account for everything that you did while you were on the job that day, would you be okay with that? Would you get pardoned from your Lord? If not, then you're already off the mark. So that's how I always kind of like took my career and just try to stay as close. I use that as my guiding line for me. So, you know, social media is going to be what it's going to be. 10 years from now, it'll be something different. Right. But what will be the same is the threat of the job, the duties of the job, the disenfranchisement of Black and brown people will still be here. Economic disenfranchisement will be here. And y'all might even still be here.
Hope so.
That badge. All right.
All right, Shafiq, thank you for that. Thank you, all of you, for sharing that. We're going to end on this note, which is this. For anyone that's listening at home, obviously, we want to let them know there are resources available that are out there. All right, we just put it up on the screen here. You can see it's crisis text line, law enforcement officers text blue to 741-741. And you continue down the page there, you see there's other resources. This has been an important topic for conversation. And our goal here is to provide support, to provide education, and to motivate. I want to remind everyone that please, the date would be June 9th. We'll be having a conversation and discussion about PTSD. All right. So for anyone that's home that's listening, please be sure to tune in. I want to once again thank everyone for listening, and especially want to thank everyone on the panel, Frank, Shana, Will, Shafiq. All of your sharing today has been motivational and educational, and I can't thank you all enough for all that you've done tonight and for all that you've done in the line of duty. All right. I hope to continue to share a message and to support our local law enforcement. All right.
Thank you.
Guys, I hope you guys all have a wonderful night, and everyone stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.